Electric Sunshine Man. Huh. Yeah, I like that. Yes, sir. A fine introduction. Sunshine in a bottle. Music in a box. Sounds crazy, but I did it. In fact, I thought I could do anything. From the time I was born. Oh, incidentally, my birthday is February 11th. Anyway, from the time I was just a kid, I had the notion that nothing was impossible. It was just that no one had figured out how to do it yet. So I spent my entire life doing things that no one else ever did before.
When you were 7 and moved here to Michigan from Ohio, you figured out that birds could fly because they ate worms. And if people ate worms, then they could fly too. But you also figured out that eating worms wasn't such a super idea. So since I was younger than you, you told me if I ate them, I could fly. Yeah!
Yeah, well, I was wrong. You got sick, I got a whipping, and nobody flew. It wasn't the last time I was wrong, but it didn't keep me from doing the impossible.
I've been a teacher in this school for 20 years, but I've never seen like that Edison boy. He's driving me crazy with his impossible questions. When I tell him I don't know, he wants to know why I don't know. It's a waste of time to keep him in school. I'm going to recommend they keep him at home and let his mother try to cope with him.
So, for the next several years, I taught him at home. Every day, Tom, take your questions and your experiments down to the basement. You can work on the impossible down there.
I lived next door to Tommy for a long time. Me and him built some neat stuff in that basement. We used to kind of borrow things from the neighbors. Once we made telegraph, we took stovepipe wire and strung it on the trees between our houses. Then we got some rags and bottles for insulation and brass for rings. And it worked too. We sent Morse code just like real operators.
Somewhere along about that time, I got my first job. I was a candy butcher.
Yeah, Tom was on my train selling candy and newspapers on the Detroit Run. I think he was about 12. When he wasn't selling, he was reading. But reading wasn't enough. He had to prove everything he read. So I let him set the lab on the box card. Then, when his experiment set the car on fire. I guess I should have fired him. Instead, I moved him to another job. I suspect between his experiments and his practical jokes,
I was starting to go deaf in one ear, and I was still experimenting. In fact, I finished my first invention that year and paid my first visit to the patent office.
Thomas Alva Edison electronic vote recorder, number 90-646. Patent granted. Do come in.
It was a lot faster in those days. I was so proud of myself. I took that thing straight over to Congress. I thought my first fortune was made, but the darn thing didn't work.
As a veteran congressman, son, I can tell you what your problem was. Your invention worked. It just worked too good. It kind of goes so fast, it left no time for the opposition to speak. So, of course, Congress wouldn't buy it.
I decided right then that if there was no market for an invention, it didn't work. So much for Boston. I decided to move to New York, where I got a job working for Gold and Stock Telegraph Company. I had many more unprofitable inventions, but finally, I got a winner. So I went straight back to the patent office.
Thomas A. Edison. Edison Universal Printer. Nice to see you again, Mr. Edison.
As Vice President of the Golden Stock Telegraph Company, I can tell you, Edison, we are very impressed, sir. This goes from stock tickers and real breakthrough. We're prepared to offer you $14,000 for it, if that's satisfactory.
Satisfactory? Little did he know I was hoping for 5 and would have gladly accepted 3. I spent my unexpected fortune setting up a workshop across the Hudson in Newark, New Jersey. I hired John, Will, Batch, and Charlie, and some other top-notch mechanics. And I became a businessman. Well, actually, I hired a bookkeeper to keep up with my business, and I went back to my inventions, which, of course, took me back to the patent office.
Thomas Edison. Quadruplex. Improved instrument for sending 4 messages simultaneously. You're getting to be a familiar face, Tom.
I really enjoyed that invention. You see, I got fired once for interrupting a supervisor who was trying to send a telegraph message. With my telegraph, 4 people could send messages at the same time without interrupting each other. Well, anyway, with the money from the quadruplex, we moved to Menlo Park and set up the world's first research lab. Now, that was my greatest invention. I invented the Invention Factory.
That you have in mind, and this
All of us were really proud to be working for Mr. Edison, the boss. We almost invented a telephone in that lab. It's true, the boss applied for a patent.
Tom, I'm a little embarrassed to tell you this, but we here in the patent department don't think your design for a telephone is adequate. You'll have to make some improvements.
While we were making the improvements on the telephone, he discovered a scientific phenomenon that people started calling the Edison effect. He got so carried away with it, he let a guy by the name of Bell beat into the patent on the telephone. The Edison effect didn't amount to anything until a fellow by the name of Marconi took it and developed the radio.
But we did come up with one good thing out of that telephone research.
Yeah, while the boss was working on a carbon microphone, he got the wild notion. He said that he was going to build a machine that would talk.
I've seen you do the impossible before, boss, but I'll bet you this box of cigars. It won't work.
You build that machine like I told you, and we'll see.
So I did. It was a strange contraption. It had a cylinder, a needle, a tube, and a crank.
When the machine was finished, the boss turned the crank and shot it to the tube. Mary had a little lamp and put the needle back into the head of the cylinder and turned the crank again. And the machine said, Mary had a little lamp. It nearly scared us to death.
Have a cigar, John. Pass him around. You see, I told you, nothing's impossible. Impossible?
No. Nothing's impossible. Don't let the world tell you it can't be done, 'cause it can.
machine worked perfectly, I was surprised as anyone. You see, I never quite trusted anything to work right the first time.
And you sure must have trusted our next invention, because it didn't work right the first time, or the second, or the third.
We did work on that a long time, didn't we? In the beginning, it seemed simple enough. Simple?
Yeah, the boss had those electricity fellows were on the wrong track with the arc light, so we were just going to improve it a little.
The truth is, someone told the boss that it's impossible to subdivide electric current. So of course, he had to prove
Nobody knew how to do it yet.
Right. Remember we were looking for filaments? We couldn't find anything that would glow without burning to ash. We tried hundreds of things.
Then we figured out that the filaments would burn better in a vacuum. So we put them in a bulb and pumped the air out.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Then we had to go back and test all those things over again.
As your maker, Mr. Edison, I must tell you that these electric light experiments are taking too long and having no results. Our patience and our money are coming to an end.
She was right. We didn't seem to be making any progress. But I figured if I worried about her, we'd never make any progress. So I went back to work. Hey, Charlie, let's try that lamp of black carbon.
We already did. It burned too fast.
But that was because of the oxygen in the air. There's no oxygen in a vacuum. Let's try it again. Here, Batch, carbonize some of this cotton thread.
It took us hours to get that carbon thread into those bulbs without breaking it. But we finally did it. Then we pumped the air out and turned the current on.
It's glowing.
Like a little bit of sunshine.
Let's see how long it lasts.
So we stayed there to watch them, watch them, watch them, watch.
We stayed all night. When our shift ended, the day shift ended, they sat down and watched.
We sat there watching that light for 2 days. It lasted 45 hours.
The electric sunshine man, doing the best that he can. Spreading the light, doing all right. The electric sunshine man, the electric sunshine man, the electric sunshine man, doing the best that he can. Spreading the light, doing all right. The electric sunshine man, the electric sunshine man, sunshine in a bottle, glowing in a glass. There was nothing he couldn't do. He had a dream, and it all came true. It's the electric sunshine man, doing the best that he can. Spreading the light, doing all right. The electric sunshine man, the electric sunshine man, electric sunshine man, doing the best that he can. Spreading the light, doing all right. The electric sunshine man, the electric sunshine
We did it! We made the first electric light bulb. And I went to, yeah, you guessed it, I went straight to the patent office.
Congratulations, Tom. I thought that talking machine, that phonograph, was a great invention. But this, well, I don't know what to say.
Most people didn't know what to say when they read about the new light. The boss figured that they needed to see for themselves, so he invited anyone who was interested to come to Menlo Park on New Year's Eve to see how the electric light works. We worked on in 1880 with the electric light, but that wasn't nearly as convincing as we wanted to be.
No, we worked another year and did a lot more experiments before we convinced anyone that electricity was here to stay.
So we went back to work on filaments.
We tried rags, wood, snakeskin, animal fur, leather, macaroni, pomegranate peel, onion skin, wood,
Nancy and I built when we were kids. We had to invent or adapt everything we used. I was in seventh heaven.
Sockets, switches, dynamos, fuses, fixtures, generators, and wires.
Wires. Boy, did we lay wires. I wondered if I was an electrician or a ditch digger. We laid 18 miles of wire underground. Mr. Edison right along there with us in the trenches, checking every box poured and every connection made.
But it was worth it because it worked. It all worked. Every bulb on every street and in every house came on when I pulled the master switch. Well, it showed. We got our backing and started the Edison Electric Company and the electronic age.
It was a dream come true.
Yeah, not just because of their electric lights, but what we could afford to build because of them. New labs in new locations in West Orange. New equipment and supplies. Anything and everything an inventor could ask for.
When he was young, he had a plan of what he thought he'd do. He built a place where he could make people's dreams come true. He'd have a storeroom filled with things of every shape and kind. He had someone build any dream he had in mind. The sky would be the limit, and even that might be a little too confining for what he hoped he'd see. So through the years, he kept in mind whenever things went wrong, that there was still tomorrow, and he'd tell himself, dream on. And now, he's reached the end of all the dreams he's had. And I guess perhaps you wonder if he's not a little sad. Well, it's not so bad for dreams to end, and here is something new. You see, the ending of a dream is when that dream comes true. The sky will be the limit, and even there might be a little too confining for what you hoped to see. So through the years, just keep in mind whenever things go wrong, that there is still tomorrow, so tell yourself, dream on. Yes, there will be tomorrow, so tell yourself, dream on. Yes, there will be tomorrow, so tell yourself, dream on. Dream on.
Oh, we invented some grand things in those labs.
Another one, Tom, do you realize you filed nearly 1,000 patents? You're in here more often than the postman. As the editor of one of the biggest days in this country, I will not be made a fool of. Fox, is this where I did a joke? Edison invents moving picture camera. Did you write that and picture the moon? Fox, I'm warning you. If you picked up Edison's finest for practical joke.
No, ma'am. No joke, ma'am. He has developed a camera that moves.
takes place. Then he has another machine that magnifies pictures and projects them on a screen. He's invented Hollywood.
I can hardly wait to see what impossible thing you are going to invent next.